Hello, hello. It's that time. I got a lot of requests, especially in the live streams I've done recently, to do another cooking video. Now this is not for everyone, I understand that, that's fine, but I like to cook. I've done a few of these in the past, so I thought what I would do today is show you one of my favorite dishes. But before we get into that, the pragmatics of that, we need to talk about a bit of theory. I'm talking Schnitzel. Ja, ich hatte glaubt, es ist Zeit, wieder etwas zusammen zu kochen. Ja? Austrian dish. Schnitzel. Basically a scallop, right? A scallop. Escalope. Meat that is very, very thin. But here's what I mean when I say theory. So traditionally, Wiener Schnitzel is something very specific, a breaded scallop, but it has to be veal. Now, if you've been to Germany or Austria, you're likely to say, I've had many schnitzels and they were pork. Yes, that is correct. You could, of course, bread another type of meat that is not veal and then serve it the way you would serve schnitzel. But then officially, you're not allowed to call it Wiener Schnitzel. Then it becomes Schnitzel nach Wiener Art. Schnitzel in the style of Vienna. Splitting hairs, but this is important. Wiener Schnitzel is veal. I'm not going to do veal. I'm going to do chicken. And that makes this Schnitzel nach Wiener Art. I'm going to show you how to prepare it. I'm going to show you how to bread it. I'm going to show you how to cook it. And then maybe an eating sample. One of my favorite dishes. I've probably eaten my body weight in schnitzels over the years. Now, one thing to bear in mind for my vegetarian friends, you can actually use the technique I show you here with vegetables. So you could use slices of zucchini, for example, or kohlrabi. You can bread them the same way, cook them the same way, you get something that's actually quite nice. You could probably even do it with broccoli. Probably would stick together. So there are options, and if you're vegan, you can't use the egg that I use for the breading, you could use a bit of oil. That works too. So you can do this completely vegan style. But that's not what I'll be doing today. So let's get started. Okay, I'm sorry for the peculiar angle, but I hope this somewhat works. I am giving you fair warning. We're about to get pretty loud, but let's see what we have. So what we will need for a schnitzel is a meat mallet, and that has two sides. There's a tenderizing side and there's a flat side. For schnitzel, especially in this case, where I'm using chicken, you don't need the tenderizer. You can just use the flat side. So we're going to do that. Now, I've washed my hands. I have my schnitzel, my chicken, soon to be schnitzel, and I have that here, right? I happen to freeze it in these Ziploc bags. Don't throw out the bag. The bag is going to be very useful in just a second. So the first thing I want to do here, now I have raw chicken all over my hands. I have to cut this and then pound it into shape. So this needs a little bit of cleaning up. First of all, you have that tiny little fillet there that can come off. And this, you see this is thick on one end, thin on the other end. I want to cut this in half. I'm cutting in half, so I want something that's super thin. Bear in mind, an actual schnitzel, 2 to 4 millimeters in diameter. That is very, very thin. It cooks very, very quickly, and the reason for that is that you make it so thin. Okay, just clean this up a little bit. It's nothing terrible. There we go. Okay, so cutting that. Some more rubbish. Hand flat, huh? It's not a cutting class, but still. Sharp knife, flat hands. That's good enough. Okay, so just wiping that down, putting it away. And I will just give my hand a rinse. Okay, we need to flatten this. Now, I'm very sorry, but this is going to be loud. If you're wearing headphones as I'm preparing this, maybe you want to just quickly turn down the volume a little bit, because I'm about to beat my meat, which I know a lot of you are very excited for. So, typically, you use 2 sheets of plastic wrap but I have this Ziploc bag, which I have to throw out after this. It's been raw chicken in it. This is really good. The reason for this is that now if I'm going to beat this, it's going to spread out evenly, okay? Because it can't go anywhere else. It's between two layers of plastic. Okay, I'm about to start pounding, so sorry this is going to get loud. You start from the center, you go to the outsides, and you do not use all your strength. It's a relatively gentle motion. Otherwise, you're just going to destroy the meat. Special attention, of course, to that super thick end, right? But this looks pretty good to me. If you want to make sure that your meat doesn't stick to the plastic, a little bit of oil on the meat, and then it won't stick so badly. But there was some condensation on the inside of the bag, so I'm not really worried about that. Okay, I have these two pieces that I have to do as well. I could probably put those in together because they're a bit smaller. You're handling raw chicken, huh? So be a bit careful in what you touch afterwards. Sorry, I should have warned you. I'm about to beat my meat again. Now, if you hit this really hard, you're really going to destroy this. So I did that on purpose to show you. It's really a matter of control. Okay, that looks good. I'm not going to touch that, I'll clean that later. We now have our meat. You see that's come apart nicely because I was too rough. Can we see this? We can see this. Comes apart. Don't want that, but it's good enough for now. Okay, so I have my meat. I can throw out this bag. I'm going to wash my hands quickly, because the next thing we need to do is season the meat. How do you season the meat? Salt and pepper. Some people say no pepper on a schnitzel, okay? Then don't put pepper on a schnitzel. Do what you think you like, right? And because this is such thin meat, I mean, I like to put in some pepper, but then I really like pepper. Because it's pretty thin, both sides. Some salt, and when we put on salt, we don't put it on at this height, right? Just put it on from a nice height. You can see what you're doing. This is chicken breast, very little fat, not a lot of flavor, right? So you do actually need to season that a bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. Gently, gently, because again, this meat, it's so thin now, it can come apart, right? Fingers are a bit wet, but salt's clumping a bit, that's okay. Okay, final one. Try to actually dry my hands. Okay, looks good to me. Bit of pepper. For me, a lot of pepper. Again, if you don't like pepper, don't do the pepper. It's fine. If you don't like the salt, don't put in the salt. It really doesn't matter. Do whatever you want. You're the one cooking it. Okay, the next thing we need to do is very important. That's arguably one of the most important steps. We have to bread it. So I'm going to change the position of the camera. I'll show you how I bread it. Okay, we now need to actually bread our schnitzel. And this is called the Panierstraße in German, right? So you create the breading street, 3 steps. And if you've never done this before, do it. It's really easy, and it's always the same type of steps. Flour first. You put the meat in the flour. Reason for that, the flour makes the egg wash stick. And then put the meat in that, then you put the meat in breadcrumb. This happens to be panko. That's not at all Austrian. You would use Semmelbrösel, right? But I really like the result that panko gives. Here I have my eggs. I need to just mix them up a bit, right? I can't figure out the English word right now, but you know what I mean. You need to mix them. Bit of cream. Why cream? Because that's not necessarily a logical choice. Traditionally, Schnitzel, I'll try to do this a bit quietly, traditionally Schnitzel was also dipped in milk. Now I really like to use cream. This is whipping cream, and I'll tell you why. First of all, delicious. It's whipping cream. Second of all, one mistake that a lot of people make when they do breading for a schnitzel is they push down hard on the meat in the flour. They push down hard on the meat in the breadcrumb. And the reason that is wrong, this is an objective error, okay? I understand why you would do it, because you want your breading to stick. I'm just putting my cream in the fridge. So you want the breading to stick, I understand that. But traditionally, for a schnitzel, the breading has to souffle. You have to get air bubbles. And if you were to be, say, a line chef in a restaurant, you would create a schnitzel, you would fry the schnitzel. It would not souffle, the chef would not serve it. Okay? So you need to get those air bubbles. Now, I'm also going to tell you, we're not going to do that, because that requires an insane amount of oil. This is bad enough as it is. I try to keep it a little light on the oil. Okay? But having said that, that's the idea. So you don't push down on any of this. Second thing, if this was a professional kitchen, we would put salt and pepper in the flour, we would put salt and pepper in the breadcrumb, we might even put salt and pepper in there as well. Sorry, but this is not a professional kitchen, this is home cooking. I've put salt and pepper on my chicken. For me that's enough. But if you want to do it, go ahead, you just increase the flavor. But again, for me there's a difference between restaurant cooking, which has to be an extremely high standard of flavor, and just home cooking. Simple home cooking. So we have this nice mix. Now when I lift up my fork, I don't want to see very thick strings of egg hanging from this. It needs to be a nice mixture. So let's see if I've done my job. Yeah, that's good. It all drips off the fork. That's exactly how I want it to do. How I want it to be. If you don't want these air bubbles, put a little bit of oil in. But I'm not bothered. Okay. Now, simple. You know, that's the traditional thing, wet hand, dry hand. Again, I'm not in a professional kitchen, so I'll just wash my hands afterwards. It's not a big deal to me. Careful. I in fact like to use two hands because again, the meat is thin, right? I want flour everywhere, but again, very light touch, right? And excess flour, just going to make that come off. Just be careful, again, it's thin meat. It's going to fall apart if you're very rough on this. Okay, now, through the egg wash. And again, I'm not doing the, oh, spilled, nice. So what you see is what you get, right? There's no editing here. So, I'm not doing the wet hand, dry hand thing. I refuse it. A little bit more there. Okay. Do you see me pressing on this? No. Light touch. Okay, that looks good enough to me. On a plate, I'm sorry if I'm blocking this with my arms. I'll try to do this single-handedly so that you can see the process better. But I mean, this is not rocket surgery, right? It's you put the meat in the flour. Any excess is gently shaken off. Some people do a double breading. That's also perfectly fine, right? That would be egg wash, breadcrumb, egg wash, breadcrumb. You don't have to do the flour again at that point. I don't. For me, this single breading works perfectly fine. Do make sure I get breadcrumb everywhere. And again, if you do this in a restaurant, hotel pan filled to the brim, basically with breadcrumb, that's a lot easier. But again, this is home cooking. I'm making 3 schnitzels, right? So that sounds like a waste of breadcrumb to me. Okay, I'm going to quickly rinse off my hands. because I clearly need a bit more breadcrumb for the final one. I always end up with not enough breadcrumb and too much flour. I don't know why. Fact of life. Clearly don't need a whole lot, it's a pretty small schnitzel. Okay, final one. Now this one is so tiny I can easily do this with one hand. That's what she said. Flour, egg wash, and again, excess comes off. Right? It doesn't have to be dripping, just want enough for this breadcrumb to hold on to. Did I mention you don't push down on this? Okay, so that's it. I'm going to clean up and then I'm going to show you how to cook this. Okay, oil, rapeseed oil. In my case, canola oil. In Austria, often half and half, rapeseed and Butterschmalz. It's a pork product. I hope I'm not shouting, but this is bubbling a lot, so I kind of want to make sure you hear what I'm saying. I put some butter in it. I did that just for the flavor. You could fill up a pan with an enormous brick of butter, but it's likely to burn. Now you will need some good heat, but it can't be too hot, because then the breading will burn. It's a very fast cooking process. As we're doing this, I also have some other stuff going on here. I had some, this looks disgusting, but I had some mushroom cream sauce left from yesterday, so I'm warming that up. This is going to be some potatoes. And just in case you're concerned, Gurkensalat, okay, that is also vegetable. That looks pretty good to me. The bubbling, right, the water content in the oil, boiling, evaporating, so that's at least 100 degrees now. Sounds pretty good to me. You want this nice and hot, right? And you see I have quite a bit of oil in there. But again, if this was a professional kitchen, that'd be twice as much oil, okay? Smells pretty good to me. I'm going to do a quick test with my tiny schnitzel. When I hold this in, this should sizzle. If it does not sizzle, don't put the meat in. The oil is not hot enough yet. And what will happen then is that the breading is going to suck up the oil. You're going to end up with a disgusting, soggy, greasy piece of meat. And if you've ever had this issue with breading and you just can't get it to be crunchy, well then now you know why. That butter, you can hear the sound going down, so I'm thinking we're pretty close to my ideal temperature. Now again, will it sizzle? If it doesn't, or it's not hot enough, could you put in a thermometer and measure it? Yeah, 160 degrees sounds pretty sweet to me. Hear that? I like it, but I'm going to wait for just a second. Not hot enough yet. I just want that a little bit hotter. It's always a challenge because you want this to be nice, you want this to be, the breading should be golden brown, and the fun thing is you also know when it's done. When it's golden brown on both sides, it's done. We've pounded that meat so thinly, it's really all you need. I think this is good for my potatoes, pre-boiled. Leftovers. I'm going to be fiddling a bit with this in the background, I'm sorry. Okay, shall we try again? Butter is moving away. That's what I'm looking for. Browning ever so slightly, don't put your finger in. At this point, that's not a wise idea anymore. I'm sorry about the noise. I've chosen not to turn on my fan. That looks good. Okay, nice, bubbly. Yeah, that's what I want. Is it gonna fit? Yeah, it'll fit. Okay. Schnitzel is not the type of meat that you put into a pan and forget about. You have to stay with this because this needs to move. And traditionally, you move the pan. That's how you get that soufflé effect. Now again, I don't think we're going to get that, but that's fine. In Austria, they actually call this schwimmen. Schnitzel brauchst du schwimmen. It should swim. That's how much oil you use. Now again, professionally, there would be more oil in there. What else can you do? Some people are a little scared. Sorry, just working on my potatoes. Some people are a little scared about moving the pan. That's hot oil, I understand. Meat fork, move it. Don't stab it into the meat. Just move it. Gently move it. Gently move it. Keep it moving. You can also do that if the pan frightens you. That's perfectly acceptable. Okay? Now I see that at the edges there it's starting to color. So I'm using a fish slice. It's the UK term. Fish spatula. Right? Just turning it over. No. That is way too pale still. Leave it. Usually I use a little less oil. I could have let that oil get a little hotter. And every time, I like this because every time it's a fun experiment, right? Like every time you have to figure it out. Is it going to work? How is it going to do? You know, what do I end up with? Here's my cream sauce. I'm adding a little bit of chicken stock to that. Sorry about this. A little bit of stock to wetten that a bit. There we go. And the schnitzel. That's long enough. Move. Looks a bit golden brown. Gonna check. I wanted more golden than that, but that's a small one. There we go. Also, what I just did is wrong. Don't flip it towards yourself. Flip it away from yourself, right? So that if it slips out, you don't splatter yourself with hot oil. But yeah, I like living on the edge, so for me this is how I do things. Now if you want to be pedantic about it, that's quite dark. Ideally I would want something that's a little less dark than that. I'm sorry, but there's probably a horrid noise. I'm so sorry. If you were wondering, cream sauce and mushrooms, perfect combination. Works very well with schnitzel. Okay, want to see the other side? Play with the heat as well. That's bubbling very hard. A little lower. I also think we're almost there. Try preparing a plate with a bit of kitchen towel. Kitchen tissue. Paper towel. I keep forgetting what you call this. Paper towel, sorry. Away from the fire though. You know it's not fire, but still. Away from the heat. Okay. Careful when you take it out, don't destroy the breading. Because this is chicken, no risks. I always want to see one on the inside, see if it's done. Beautiful and moist, because all the moisture of the chicken is trapped inside because of the breading. This is more than done. Put it on a paper towel to get rid of the excess oil. You can use tongs for this, it doesn't really matter. There we go. Okay, heat off, yes. So I have my cream sauce, have my tatties all ready to go. This is hot, that looks good. Okay, I'll show you what this looks like plated. Okay, done. This looks particularly disgusting, but it's just it's a mushroom sauce. Don't worry about it. Also not traditional, just had to use it up. Although there is such a thing as Rahmschnitzel, but that is actually a schnitzel kind of baked in an oven in cream, and it's not breaded. So this is how I want it to look, and the test is always the sound. If you hear that sound, that's breaded properly. It's nice and crispy. Potatoes, very simple. In a nutshell, I'll be honest, the easiest way to summarize Schnitzel as God's gift to mankind. I love this so much. Anyway, I hope I haven't bored you to death. Two more things I wanted to say, now that I can think clearly again because I've eaten. One, if you cook something like a schnitzel, anything breaded, really, that's something you cook and then serve. You can't really keep it warm or something, because the breading will get soggy and it gets very unpleasant. You've worked very hard to get that nice crispy finish on it, so don't leave it out. Make sure that if you have trouble planning it, you have everything ready, and that's the last thing you cook. Second thing is, how do you serve a schnitzel? You saw that I didn't actually serve it with lemon. It's very common to put a slice of lemon on it. It's very good. I forgot. Second way you sometimes see this is you serve the schnitzel, you take an anchovy, which you roll up, with some capers, and sometimes a cherry tomato, and you put that on. Usually I do this because usually on a skewer. I believe that's a gross misunderstanding of the Wiener Schnitzel, because the only time I've ever seen that in Germany was actually in a Hilton. So there is some theory about that's being some sort of Gallicized version of this recipe, where sort of French influence, and that was added, it elevates it a bit, etc. Every other time I've had this dish, Wiener Schnitzel or Schnitzel nach Wiener Art, in Germany or in Austria, it has never ever been served with anchovy. Okay, never ever. But if you really want to do it a bit elevated, you could. Final thing is, in Austria they often serve schnitzel with Preiselbeeren, cranberries. Pretty sure, cranberries. That is a great combination, because they have a sort of tartness that's really nice with the sort of fried, slight fattiness of it. Cuts through that a bit, really delicious. That's another thing I can recommend. If you've never tried that, try something breaded with cranberries. Really, really good. Those are my final thoughts. Again, I hope this has been a little entertaining. I'm glad to see you later. Make it! And let me tell you how you